Hmm, what are these? Credit cards? Calculators? Clickers? How do you use those then? Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Lab. I'm Chris Hall. In this episode, I went over to the medical school here at Swansea to talk to Dr. Sam Webster. Sam's been doing lots of interesting things with his embryology and anatomy lectures. So I started by asking Sam if he could give me some background to the group that he was working with.
Yep, we have about 72 medical students every year who come from a background, it's a mix of some are science graduates, some are non-science graduates, so some have come from geography, English, what have you. They have maybe biology A-level or something like that, but some are very, very non-biological, so this is very new to them, what we're teaching, and some of them come from a science background, so they have, say, a fairly good knowledge of the various sciences and anatomy, but often not embryology. Embryology is quite new for almost everybody in the group. But for some members of the group, it's not too difficult. For other members of the group, it's really, really tough stuff.
Okay, so why did you decide to use clickers with this group?
Largely, it's about interactivity. So I teach anatomy every week to the same students in small groups. In small groups, it's great. They get very interactive, they ask me questions, they challenge me, I challenge them. We can physically get involved with the tissues and structures that we're working with. And it's a great way of learning. I give them tasks and I can find out how much they know, how much they don't know, that sort of thing. In a lecture theatre, you can do the same thing without clickers, but it's much harder. The clickers makes it really easy to get the students thinking, keep the students awake, and to assess how much they really know, how much they got out of your lecture. And also you can assess how much background reading they've done by asking them questions outside the lecture. So that was the main reason, was test how much they were getting from what I was saying and to get them involved in what I was saying.
Okay, so what did you actually do with the clickers in the lectures? How did it work?
I asked the students if they'd mind being split into a boys-girls competition group, and they love that idea. We do worry a little bit about competition in medicine, but the students didn't worry about it at all. It was aimed to be a fun competition, nothing too serious, with maybe a silly prize at the end. So we split them into boys and girls. So we used the Turning Point software to assign. They could assign themselves to two teams, and then usually I would give the lecture in the normal way. And at the end of the lecture, I'd ask them 5 questions, usually of increasing difficulty. So 4 of the questions would be based upon what I'd been talking about in the lecture, and the final question would be something outside the lecture. So then I'd get a good gauge of how many in the group had got to grips with the concepts I'd been talking about, say, the process of a structure forming, and if they'd struggled with it. And then straight after that question, we'd revisit that area. So if they all got it, no bother, just flip through the slides and say, yeah, you remember this. If they didn't get it, we could go through the slides again and say, aha, now do you remember this, did this, and that's why the answer is this. And that's obviously really, really helpful to them. It tells me as well how much they took in and whether my teaching was doing a good job or not. So we went through the 4 questions, and the 5th question would be something outside the lecture, see if they've done any background reading, maybe something relevant in the news, and I was often very surprised by how many got that question right. I hadn't touched on it in the lecture, I hadn't gone near it, but most of the students had a good understanding of what I was talking about and how it linked to clinical medicine. Yes, that was a bit of an eye-opener, something you wouldn't normally get from a lecture. Then after that, we'd toss up the scores and they'd all get very excited about who won that week.
So you felt it worked? It was a successful intervention?
It worked really well, really well. Embryology is accused of being a very dry, very boring subject. I try to change that anyway. I link it to clinical medicine, I link it to the anatomy we teach, you link it to real life cases, and the students appreciate that. You also kind of just teach them what they need to know. You don't teach it at a biology level where you need to know all the genes being expressed and the signals and what have you. But you teach it to a level where they need to have a good understanding to be able to understand the anatomy, congenital defects, and that sort of thing. But the clickers got them really animated. And as we went through the series, we have a series of 10 lectures. As we went through the series, they would get themselves more organised at the beginning of the lecture to make sure they'd pay attention to what I was saying, pay attention to the lecture notes, so they'd be prepared for the questions at the end as they got more and more competitive. As we started, you see, the girls won the first one and the second one and the third one. The boys were feeling pretty bad about this. So they were a bit more awake in the lectures, which was great. And when I'd asked a question, I'd give them a bit of time to come up with the answer, and they'd discuss it amongst themselves, which is great. So they're working in small groups, discussing the problem. Brilliant, yeah, it worked really well.
Did you get any feedback from the students about the experience of using the clickers?
Yeah, got loads of, we asked for weekly feedback. We got loads of positive feedback about the clickers. Can more staff use it? It was a really good way of, revisiting stuff, and yeah, they really liked it. They really liked the interactivity, and got lots of noisy feedback after the lecture when they were complaining that the other side had cheated or something like that. Yeah, very, very positive.
So you'll use it again?
Yeah, definitely. I'll use it every year now, every series. Now the course has changed. We've got fewer embryology lectures, and they're a bit more spaced out. But we'll definitely do the same. I'll certainly use the clickers. Maybe in the boy-girl competition format or not, I don't know, but the use of clickers is it's brilliant. It told me a lot about the students and helped the students obviously revise stuff they were struggling with. Yeah, it's good.
So the way you've been talking, I think I know the answer to this next question, but would you recommend it to other staff to use it as well?
Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, I recommended it to staff as a good idea probably a couple of years before I started using it. And the university bought a set and I thought, brilliant, I'll use these in my lectures. My feedback was so good because all the staff see the same feedback that other staff started to put their hands up and say, right, can we use this? How do we use it? Where do we get it from? And so on. So other people have started using it after I started using it.
Okay, so if you could say one thing you were trying to recommend it to another member of staff, what would be the one positive thing that you'd say that this is why you should use clickers?
There are lots of positives. I think probably the most important positive is that you can gauge straight away how much the group has got from your teaching, whether you're doing it right or not. That's the most important thing.
Right. You mentioned you'd done this boy-girl competition. Who won?
In the end, it was a draw, 5-5. So the boys slowly clawed back each week. But I was a little bit surprised that some of the easier questions, some of the students struggled to get right. So some of the easier questions I start off with, a lot of the students were performing quite poorly on. And I came to the conclusion that many of the boys had registered in the girls' team and were putting in the wrong answers. So there was a fair bit of cheating going on. But that was largely my fault because I wanted to keep it light-hearted. It wasn't serious. If I tell them it's serious, they play serious. But we were keeping it light-hearted. So there was a bit of cheating going on. The boys I think generally got better as the course went on. But yeah, the 5-5 draw was fair enough.
Okay, well, sounds very successful. Thanks very much, sir.
Yeah, thanks.